r/ProRevenge teacher stalked my son, so I destroyed her career. I destroyed my son's stalker teacher's career, and I'd do it again. The first time I saw Ms. Patricia Hendricks outside my son's school at 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night, parked across from our house in her distinctive red Honda Civic, I thought it was a coincidence. Maybe she lived in the neighborhood. Maybe she was visiting someone. But when I walked toward her car to say hello, she peeled out so fast she left tire marks on the asphalt. That was 3 weeks ago. Now, as I sit here typing this story, Patricia Hendricks is no longer a teacher. She's not working anywhere in education, actually. Her teaching license has been permanently revoked, she's facing criminal charges, and her name is mud in every school district within a 100-mile radius of our town. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning, because this story, this absolute nightmare that consumed 4 months of my family's life, needs to be told in full. My name is Jennifer Walsh, I'm 41 years old, and I'm a divorced mom to the most amazing 14-year-old boy you could imagine. My son Tyler is in 8th grade at Millbrook Middle School in our suburban Ohio town. He's always been a good student, not a genius, but solid B's and A's, plays JV basketball, has a tight group of friends. A normal, happy kid adjusting well to his dad and me splitting up 2 years ago. The problem started in September when Tyler began his 8th grade year in Ms. Hendricks' English class. Patricia Hendricks was 28 years old, had been teaching for 5 years, and had what I initially thought was simply an enthusiastic teaching style. She'd been at Millbrook for 3 years and had a reputation for being dedicated and going above and beyond for her students. Looking back now, I can see all the red flags I missed. But hindsight is 20/20, and when your kid's teacher seems to care about their education, your first instinct isn't to be suspicious. The first sign something was off came in early October. Tyler mentioned that Ms. Hendricks had started keeping him after class to discuss his writing assignments. Not unusual, teachers do this all the time. But then it became every day. Then she started suggesting he come in during lunch periods for extra help. Again, not inherently problematic, except Tyler's grades in English were already strong. He was pulling A- consistently. "Mom, I don't really need the extra help," Tyler told me one evening as he did homework at our kitchen table. "My essays are good. She talks to me about other stuff. Like, asks about what I do on weekends, what movies I like, stuff about dad." I felt a small twinge of unease but pushed it down. Maybe she was just trying to connect with her students. Maybe she was being mentoring. I told Tyler that if he felt uncomfortable, he should let me know, but that it was probably fine. God, I wish I'd trusted that first instinct. By November, Tyler was coming home frustrated almost daily. Ms. Hendricks had started texting him on his phone. She'd gotten his number from the emergency contact list, claiming she needed to communicate about missing assignments. Except Tyler wasn't missing any assignments. The texts were things like, "Hope you have a great weekend, Tyler. Smiling face with smiling eyes, and thinking of you during the big game tonight. You're going to do amazing. Red heart." That's when I decided to have a conversation with Tyler about boundaries, and that's when he told me something that made my blood run cold. "She asked me if I thought she was pretty," Tyler said, not meeting my eyes. "Last week after class. She was like, 'Tyler, can I ask you something personal? Do you think I'm attractive? I know you're mature for your age and I value your opinion.' I didn't know what to say, Mom. It was so weird. I saw red. I literally saw red. But I forced myself to stay calm, because the last thing I wanted was to embarrass Tyler or make him feel like he'd done something wrong. 'Tyler, that is absolutely inappropriate,' I told him. 'Teachers should never ask students personal questions like that. I'm going to handle this, okay?' The next morning, I called Millbrook Middle School and requested a meeting with Principal Robert Martinez. I've always been diplomatic in my approach to school issues. I'd worked in corporate human resources for 15 years before becoming a freelance consultant, so I understood the importance of documentation and following proper channels. Principal Martinez, a well-meaning man in his mid-50s who'd been at Millbrook for 8 years, listened to my concerns with what seemed like genuine attention. He took notes, nodded in all the right places, and assured me he would look into the situation. "Ms. Hendricks is one of our most dedicated teachers," he told me. "But obviously, if there are boundary issues, we need to address them immediately. I'll speak with her today and make sure this behavior stops." I left feeling cautiously optimistic. Problem identified, proper channels notified, solution in progress. I could not have been more wrong. If anything, Ms. Hendricks' behavior escalated after my meeting with Principal Martinez. The texting increased. She started calling Tyler at home in the evenings, claiming she needed to discuss assignments, but Tyler told me the conversations were mostly about his personal life, his family situation, his feelings about his parents' divorce. "She said she understands what I'm going through because her parents got divorced when she was young too," Tyler reported after one such call. "She said I could talk to her about anything, that she's here for me in ways other adults might not be." I called Principal Martinez again. This time, his response was less reassuring. "Jennifer, I did speak with Patricia, and she assures me that she's simply trying to provide additional support for Tyler during what she understands is a difficult time for your family. Sometimes our teachers go above and beyond, and while I appreciate your concerns, Patricia has been nothing but professional in her interactions with students." Professional? I couldn't keep the incredulity out of my voice. She asked my 14-year-old son if he thinks she's attractive. She's texting him at all hours. This isn't professional, it's grooming behavior. There was a long pause. That's a very serious accusation, Jennifer. Without more concrete evidence of inappropriate behavior, I can't take disciplinary action against one of our teachers based on misunderstandings. Misunderstandings. I hung up the phone shaking with rage. That's when I decided to document everything myself. I had Tyler screenshot every text message. I started keeping a detailed log of every interaction he reported with Ms. Hendricks, including dates, times, and exact conversations. I researched the legal definitions of inappropriate teacher-student relationships and educational boundary violations. But Ms. Hendricks wasn't stupid. She seemed to sense that I was paying closer attention, because her tactics changed. The texting decreased, but she found other ways to maintain inappropriate contact with Tyler. She started finding excuses to be in the hallway when Tyler was at his locker. She'd, coincidentally, be in the same areas where Tyler spent his free time. She began offering him rides home from school, which Tyler, thank God, had the sense to decline. And then came the day that changed everything. It was a Thursday in early December. Tyler had JV basketball practice after school, which usually ran until 5:30 p.m. I typically picked him up at 5:45, giving him time to change and gather his things. At 5:50, Tyler still hadn't come out of the school building. I texted him, got no response, and decided to go look for him. I found Tyler in Ms. Hendricks' classroom. The door was closed, the lights were dimmed, and she was sitting inappropriately close to him at her desk, her hand on his arm, speaking to him in low, intimate tones. "Tyler," I said loudly as I opened the door without knocking. "Ready to go?" The transformation on Ms. Hendricks' face was instantaneous. She jerked back from Tyler like she'd been burned, her cheeks flushing red. Tyler looked mortified and confused. "Oh. Mrs. Walsh," she said, her voice artificially bright. "Tyler and I were just discussing his creative writing assignment. He has such talent, and I was giving him some personalized feedback." Tyler stood up quickly. "Can we go, Mom?" As we walked to the car, I asked Tyler what had really been happening in that classroom. "She said she wanted to show me something on her computer," he said quietly. "But then she started talking about how mature I am, how I'm not like other boys my age. She said she feels a special connection with me. And then she touched my face, Mom. She brushed my hair back and said I was handsome." That night, after Tyler went to bed, I sat at my kitchen table and made a decision that would change everything. If the school wasn't going to protect my son, I was going to protect him myself. And if that meant destroying Patricia Hendricks' career, so be it. I started with research. Deep, thorough, obsessive research. First, I looked into Patricia Hendricks' background. Thanks to public records, social media, and some strategic conversations with other parents, I began building a comprehensive profile. Patricia had been married briefly in her mid-20s, divorced after less than 2 years. No children. She lived alone in a one-bedroom apartment about 10 minutes from the school. Her social media presence was surprisingly revealing for a teacher, lots of photos of herself in revealing outfits, posts about feeling lonely, several concerning comments about connecting with people who really understand her. But the real goldmine was when I started reaching out to parents of Patricia's former students. It took weeks of careful networking, but I eventually connected with Linda Morrison, whose son Jake had been in Patricia's class the previous year. When I explained my concerns, Linda went very quiet. "Oh my God," she said finally. "I thought I was crazy. Jake told me some things about Miss Hendricks that seemed off, but he was so embarrassed, and I didn't know how to handle it." Jake Morrison, now a freshman in high school, had experienced almost identical behavior from Patricia. Inappropriate texting, requests for personal information, comments about his maturity and appearance. Linda had complained to the school, but nothing had been done. "They told me she was just being supportive," Linda said bitterly. "They made me feel like I was overreacting." With Linda's help, I connected with 2 more families. The pattern was identical in every case. Boys around Tyler's age, all going through some kind of family difficulty, divorce, financial stress, illness, all targeted by Patricia for inappropriate attention. But here's the thing about patterns of predatory behavior, they escalate. And Patricia Hendricks was about to make the mistake that would end her career forever. The escalation started in mid-December. Tyler reported that Patricia had begun making comments about his physical development, asking him about whether he was interested in girls yet and whether he'd ever been with anyone. She'd started finding excuses to touch him, straightening his shirt collar, patting his shoulder, brushing imaginary lint off his clothes. Then came the Friday that made me realize I was dealing with something much more serious than inappropriate boundaries. Tyler came home visibly shaken. He went straight to his room and didn't come out for dinner. When I finally went to check on him, he was lying on his bed staring at the ceiling. "What happened today, Tyler?" He was quiet for a long moment. Then, Ms. Hendricks asked me to stay after school to help her move some boxes. But when I got to her classroom, there weren't any boxes. She had music playing and she changed clothes. She was wearing this tight sweater and she'd done something different with her makeup. My heart was pounding, but I kept my voice calm. "What happened then?" She said she wanted to talk to me about something personal. She said she'd been thinking about me a lot, that I was special to her. She said she knew I was mature enough to handle an adult conversation. "Mom," she sat really close to me and she put her hand on my leg. I felt sick. Physically sick. "What did you do?" I said I needed to go to basketball practice and I left. "But Mom," she grabbed my arm when I was leaving and she said, "Tyler, this can be our special secret. You don't need to tell anyone about our private conversations." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded and ran. That was it. I was done playing by the rules. That night, I called Linda Morrison and the other parents I'd connected with. I explained what had happened to Tyler and asked if they'd be willing to come forward with their own experiences. All of them agreed immediately. But I didn't stop there. If I was going to take down Patricia Hendricks, I needed to be absolutely thorough. I needed evidence that would be impossible to dismiss or minimize. So I did something that some people might consider morally questionable, but I don't regret for a second. I had Tyler wear a hidden recording device to school. Now, before anyone gets on my case about privacy laws, I did my research. In Ohio, recording conversations is legal as long as one party, Tyler, consents to the recording. And given that we're talking about protecting a minor from predatory behavior by an adult in a position of authority, I'd make the same decision again without hesitation. For 3 days, Tyler wore a tiny digital recorder in his backpack. Most of the recordings were boring classroom audio, but on the 3rd day, we hit the jackpot. Patricia had asked Tyler to stay after class again. On the recording, you can hear her closing the door, then her voice becomes softer, more intimate. "Tyler, I've been thinking about our conversation on Friday. I hope I didn't make you uncomfortable, but I want you to know that my feelings for you are very real. You're not like other boys your age. You're mature, you're handsome, you're special to me in ways that might be hard for you to understand right now. Tyler's voice, clearly uncomfortable. Ms. Hendricks, I think I should go. Please don't go yet. I know this might seem confusing, but I care about you so much, Tyler. More than I should, maybe. I've never felt this way about a student before. You make me feel things that I haven't felt in a long time. Then there's rustling sounds, and Tyler's voice, more panicked. Ms. Hendricks, please don't. I just want to hold you for a minute, Tyler. You don't have to be afraid of these feelings. I know you feel the connection between us two. I see how you look at me. More rustling, then Tyler's voice, firmer. I really have to go now. Okay. But Tyler, this is still our special secret, right? Other people wouldn't understand what we have. They'd try to ruin it. When Tyler came home that day and we listened to the recording together, he cried. This strong, mature 14-year-old boy broke down sobbing in my arms. I feel so stupid, Mom. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to hurt her feelings, but it felt so wrong. That's when I realized the full extent of what Patricia Hendricks had done to my son. She hadn't just crossed professional boundaries, she had manipulated and emotionally abused a child in her care. She had made him feel responsible for managing her inappropriate feelings. She had stolen his sense of safety and agency. And she was about to pay for it. I spent that weekend preparing my case like I was going to trial. I compiled every text message, every documented conversation, every concerning interaction. I reached out to the other families and asked them to prepare similar documentation. I researched the members of the school board, the district superintendent, and the State Department of Education's procedures for reporting inappropriate teacher behavior. But I also did something else. Something that really set my plan in motion. I hired a private investigator. Now, I know that sounds extreme, but hear me out. I had evidence of Patricia's behavior with Tyler, and I had similar stories from other families, but I wanted to know if there were more victims. I wanted to know if there was a pattern of behavior that extended beyond just inappropriate relationships with students. The private investigator, a former police detective named Mark Stevens, was expensive but thorough. Within 2 weeks, he'd uncovered information that exceeded even my worst suspicions. Patricia Hendricks had been quietly moved from her previous school district due to concerns about professional boundaries. There had been a complaint filed by parents, but instead of conducting a thorough investigation, the administration had simply chosen not to renew her contract. She'd been given positive references to help her find a new position at Millbrook Middle School. But that wasn't all. Mark had also discovered that Patricia had been using social media to research her students' personal lives extensively. She had fake accounts that she used to follow students and their families, gathering information about their home situations, their activities, their friendships. The level of surveillance was staggering and deeply disturbing. Most damning of all, Mark found evidence that Patricia had been driving by Tyler's house regularly, not just the night I'd spotted her, but for weeks. She'd been taking photos of our house, our cars, Tyler's bedroom window. When Mark showed me the evidence he'd gathered, including photos from Patricia's own phone that he'd obtained through legal but creative means, I realized I